I get to introduce one of my all-time favorite people in the entire world, the Sir in our thrival. A really dear, beautiful friend of mine who I absolutely love and cherish, who has genuinely and truly taught me things that have changed my life. And it's an honor and a pleasure to have him here and to be able to listen to him once again after all these years, Mr. Daniel Vitalis.
All throughout this field here is a plant called yerba mansa, and it does really great out here in the southwest at the hot springs, where there's like a mud, kind of like almost like a clay that it can grow in, and it needs those warm temperatures. This is a plant that many herbalists are really excited about, and the thrust right now in herbalism is to replace golden seal in the pharmacopoeia with this plant, because golden seal has been, wild harvested almost to extinction. It's a very endangered plant now. And so this plant has many of the same properties, those antimicrobial cleansing properties, extremely antifungal and antibacterial. The leaf is really gorgeous. Let me just pull one of these up for you, so you can see really how beautiful that is. And you can see here as it starts to die back, it begins to get this rusty color, which is really indicative of it. Here's a few of the roots, and the smell of them is really spicy and aromatic. Makes a great tincture, it makes a great tea. It can be dried and powdered and used topically. Fantastic plant. These are just a few of the rootlets, and in fact the tuber is often long and bright orange, almost like a caterpillar. The taste is really strong, really spicy. Anyway, just another beautiful part of this landscape is that there's so much of this medicine. In fact, there's some local herbalists who come and use this land, and they harvest the yerba mansa here. So it's a plant you'll be hearing more about in herbalism, in Western herbalism, as it's brought more and more to the forefront. This is Geronimo, the pool we call Geronimo, named after the Cherokee Apache Geronimo, who did come to this place during the time he was fighting the U.S. government and the Mexican government. He was amongst the last, or leading the last natives of this continent in the war against our government. I mean, it's really an amazing story and a story worth looking into. This pool is his namesake, and it's the pool a lot of us like to come to on the winter nights and in the late autumn nights when it's so cold here that you want to get out of these pools with your core temperature really raised. And so, this is the same water feeding down from that emerald pool that we looked at, and it's hot enough that when you get out, even on a cold night, you get out, put your clothes on, you're able to retain some of the warmth that you've gotten in the spring. And so it's great before you go to bed. In the summertime, this pool's a bit too hot, honestly. 115 degrees is pretty high, higher than most hot tubs. And so you spend your time in the cooler pools. But this is the first pool that I ever visited when I got here, and the parking lot's right out here in front of us. And so, you get out of your car, kind of come and dip in here, and then you're ready to really start relaxing into the land. I love this area here. If you look out here, we have bamboo growing just behind the salt cedars. Tucked right in here in this bamboo grove is the mud pits. This place is really interesting. Now, this is fed by another spring called Redman, and Redman's probably the most legendary spring here and the most sacred or sanctified spring, in that no one really dares to get in it. Only a rare few have ever gotten in it. The water's really hot. Just getting in here to gather this mud, it's pretty intense because you sink into it a bit. You can see here it's like a clay. Now, one of the things that I found traveling around spring jump in different places is that the clays that you find in the silts are incredibly healing. So one of the longevity secrets, or the vitality secrets, is to coat yourself in the muds in the places that you go. A way to work with the earth element. So one of the things that we like to do here is get in and scoop this mud out into buckets, and then get naked, coat your skin down in the mud, and let it dry in the sun, bake onto you. Later on, when you wash it off, it's like your skin's been remade and renewed. It's just a wonderful earth-based technology for longevity. So that water's all running down from the Redman Spring, which we're going to show you next. This is the Redman Spring. I mean, it's by far the most primal source on the land. It's also one of the least salty sources, so this is often where I'll gather my drinking water. One of the tricks I figured out is that if I gather the water into a glass jar and I set it out on the ground overnight while I'm sleeping, that the earth pulls, as the earth cools at night, the desert air cools, it pulls the heat out of the water. When I wake up, that water's cold. So it's a nice way to get this water into a state that's more fun to drink at night. Drinking this water is great. You drink a little of this before bed, you carry that warmth in your stomach as you go to sleep. It's also really good for making tea, so you can gather some wild herbs and throw them in a jar with this water, and it will infuse just from the heat. I'll just check the temperature here. Remember that emerald pool comes in at 115, which is pretty high. This one's at 118.4, 0.5, so about 118.5. That's getting into the intolerable zone. So at 115, I know I personally can handle it. At 118, just reaching in here to get some water to drink. It's hot. I mean, I'll see how long I can leave my hand in here. Yeah, it gets getting uncomfortable already. There's been a few people who've gone in, but I don't know anybody who's made it over a minute. They call it red man because you get out and your skin's definitely red. But it's got a lower TDS, so again, we're a couple hundred yards away from that original source, about 100 yards away from that emerald pool. But we're at a completely different water source. Clearly the same aquifer, the same geothermal water coming up. Here we're getting 250, 247, 242 times 10, about 2,400 parts per million. Again, lots of salt, but not enough that the salt's crystallizing. So just a completely different source. This source has a bit more sulfur in it as well. So for whatever reason, it's a unique source, just like every other source here on the property.